I have hit Challenger in Season 15, and I wanted to share with you important tips and tricks that gave me the edge during my climb. There were a lot of changes in this season, so I'd like to point out the noteworthy ones and talk about how we can create advantages from them. Let's jump right in. The first important change is the lane minion update, specifically the shift of the first cannon wave going from wave 3 to wave 4. The stat changes don't really matter too much, but the cannon wave coming in at wave 4 is extremely crucial because your level 3 is now significantly delayed compared to last season. If you and your AD carry get all the waves together, you now level up from the third melee minion on wave 4. This is extremely important to know because around this time, junglers will start to finish up their full clear or look to make a play somewhere on the map. If they're on the bot side making the play, try to hit level 3 before moving. In this example, Belveth is pinging that she wants to invade the enemy jungle. I path around Tri-Bush to not make it obvious that I'm rotating, but I know I'm 1 minion off of 3, so I wait until I get it to rotate. It really sucks to rotate to a play when you're level 2, so you want to make sure you are aware of how close you are to leveling. You can also use this to your advantage the same way you look to play for level 2 when you can bully the enemy bot lane if you know you're going to get it first. You can walk up to their face because if they try to trade or all in you, you'll win because you have all of your abilities. The next important systematic change is the duration increase of respawn home guards from 8 to 20 seconds. For some reason, this change wasn't included in the patch notes and the properties of this mechanic isn't explained at all. When you respawn, you get 20 seconds of home guards that falls off a little bit before you reach the tier 3 tower. A hidden mechanic a lot of people are unaware of is that home guards will fall off if you enter the jungle from base. When you respawn and want to roam, you want to walk through a lane and then enter the jungle before the third tower to maximize the value of home guards. I know a lot of support players have the habit of entering jungle through base, but you can be griefing yourself if you do so because you are cutting your home guards short. Get into the practice of walking through lanes when you respawn to get to the area you want to roam to. Speaking of roaming, let's talk about void grubs. Void grubs are by far the best objective because they not only count as an objective for feat of strength, but they also contribute heavily to getting first turret, so you get to double dip in 2 out of the 3 feats of strength. So the question now is, should we always roam to grubs? Well, like anything in League, it really depends. For the most part, you should usually look to roam at around 6 minutes, which is when grubs spawn. You can't just leave randomly around that time. You want to make sure your wave is either pushed into the enemy tower, your wave is pushed into you and you know the enemy support is going to roam, or the wave state is neutral. I'm not going to go too much into detail about roam timers, but I have a quick guide on it here if you want to check that out. When you are roaming to grubs, or any objective, you want to make sure you are keeping yourself hidden. This is a good habit to have in general as a support, because the less information you give to the enemy, the harder it is for them to make the right play. For example, if you show yourself on mid-wave rotating to grubs and the enemy support is very behind on tempo, the enemy team can decide to give up grubs and either go for dragon or dive your AD carry. By keeping yourself hidden, it makes it a lot harder for the enemy to make the right play. Staying hidden is even applicable even when your team is taking objectives. One thing I like doing is if I'm on blue side, I like hiding in C bush as my jungler takes grubs and to bait the enemy into thinking it's just them. It's a lot harder to try and hide yourself in C bush if you're red side because it's a pretty forward position, but you can set up there with your jungler to try to catch the enemy. For the most part, if both teams are moving to and fighting at grubs, you always want to have C bush warded and swept because this is the closest bush where a lot of fighting usually happens. I've noticed a lot of players that I have coached tend to have good roam timings, but they overstay way too long. If you know your jungler can secure grubs and the enemy support isn't roaming, you want to back so your AD carry doesn't get dove. It's fine to stick around for a bit if you feel like the enemy team is going to rotate, but if they don't, you should go back to lane. Like in this example, I went to roam for grubs because we had pushed out our bot wave, but after I saw Nami stay in lane, I went back. The enemy jungler was bot side and they were looking to dive Tristana, but I made it back just in time. I know this sounds pretty obvious, but if your jungler isn't pathing towards grubs, don't roam to it. If your jungler wants to go for dragon or an invade, make sure to follow their lead because you can't contest things alone. Another time you wouldn't want to roam to grubs is if the enemy top, mid, or jungle are super fed. Like in this example, Garen is 3-0, so if our team tried contesting grubs, we would automatically lose. In these type of cases, we want to avoid playing whichever objective they want and to try to trade the objective on the other side of the map. Grubs are one of the most impactful objectives, but you can throw your entire game trying to force them. Like any objective, you should always be thinking about the game state and if you can roam to them every time they spawn. Sometimes you can't rotate to them, which is fine, but make sure you aren't autopiloting to bot every game. Be proactive and have a plan when objectives are coming up. If you are able to win the feats of strength, when is the best time to upgrade to tier 3 boots as a support? Supports have the opportunity to upgrade their boots very early compared to other roles because the World Atlas transforms into a legendary item, so you only need one completed item. I think the best time to upgrade boots is generally going to depend on the type of support you are playing in the enemy draft. Let's start with Enchanters. A good rule of thumb is to only upgrade to tier 3 boots after your second item. The reason for this is because Enchanter items are very strong. A lot of their strengths are baked into their items, and they have some of the strongest 2-item synergies in the game. Swift March and Crimson Lucidity feel nice to have, but it's really not worth delaying your core items by 750 gold. Moving on to Hook and Engage supports, I think they should also be generally upgrading their boots to tier 3 after their second item, but there are a lot more scenarios where it makes sense to upgrade them right after their first item. In games where you are playing against majority AD or majority AP, upgrading plated steel caps and merc treads makes a lot of sense. You'll get a lot of value from the shields on both boots. I think if you're going boots of swiftness for any hook or engage, it also makes sense to rush this after your first item. Unlike enchanters, the strength of hook and engage champions are baked into their kit, and being able to create more opportunities to fight is favorable. Also, there aren't strong 2-item power spikes for these type of supports compared to enchanters. Finally, for mages, this one is really simple. You would only really upgrade to tier 3 Sork shoes if the enemy has a lot of MR, as the biggest upgrade you get on these are the % magic pen. The last thing I want to talk about is the best way to approach setting up Atakahn. Regardless of whichever form or side it's on, you most of the time want to help get prio mid first, and then work your way down or up the river, sweeping and warding as you go. This is the ideal way of setting up most objectives for many reasons. Mid lane is the shortest lane out of the 3, so mid lane minions get to lane first, which makes it so that you can get priority the fastest. If you can get lane priority mid, you can be the first to set up the jungle, because your teammate who is mid can walk with you to help you, as opposed to the enemy who is mid that has to either give up a wave to come help or to farm the wave while a fight happens in river. When you have control of the river and jungle, you can find a lot of opportunities to pick the enemy as they try to walk into the jungle blind. One of the best ward setups to pick the enemy is control warding the bush closest to mid on the side of Atakahn while having a regular ward over the wall towards the enemy. If your team has full control of the river, where you know you swept all the vision, the safest way the enemy can start to retake control is through mid, as going through the jungle has too many bushes where they can potentially get jumped. This is the most common setup, but you can build these traps in any bush in the river. The most important elements to creating these scenarios is to help get prio mid, deny vision, and to try to keep yourself hidden. Doing these things is very effective, as the enemy is pressured to try to get vision while your team is not showing on the map, because your team can potentially be on Atakahn. This is also the most ideal way of playing all objectives, by the way. I think one of the most common mistakes support players make is that they tend to run straight to the side Atakahn is from base because they're scared that the enemy can rush it, but this is incorrect majority of the time. Atakahn is pretty tanky, so you have a lot of time to set up before anyone can take it down. Make sure to help mid get prio and then set up the jungle. The worst thing you can do is rush into the jungle, get caught out, and die. There are definitely times where it makes sense to run straight to Atakahn if your team is already fighting, or if you have a small window to take it, but majority of the time that's not the case. During the 20-minute mark when Atakahn spawns, have a plan of how you want to set up. You can find game-winning picks in these scenarios. More tips on Atakahn: depending on what form he is, he will have a unique attack, but both Runius and Voracious share a somewhat similar attack pattern. Runius has a basic attack, a bolt attack, and the ring ability. You can't dodge the basic attack, but you can sidestep the bolt ability and the ring ability. You can dodge the bolt ability by sidestepping it when he casts because it shoots in the direction of the nearest ally for the duration. You can also dodge Runius' ring ability if you hug him, as the rings start out wide and closes in because it doesn't close all the way. Runius Atakahn then alternates the ability, so it's very easy to dodge. As for Voracious, this form also has the basic ability and the bolt attack, but his unique attack is the dark aura, where he surrounds himself for 2.75 seconds. He also alternates between the bolt attack and the aura, so make sure not to stand too close to Atakahn after his bolt ability to avoid getting hit. It's very important to dodge both forms' abilities because they do a lot of damage. You can easily throw a game if you don't pay attention, getting chunked out by Atakahn. Make sure to note what ability is coming up so you can reposition accordingly. Those were all the tips and tricks that gave me an edge during my climb to Challenger in Season 15. There were a lot of systematic changes, but fundamentally the game is still the same. If you're interested in coaching from me, I have the information linked in the bio. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck climbing.